I can confidently say that admitting my mental health struggles was the most courageous thing that I ever did in my life. I honestly was one of those people that subscribed to the idea that if you have a mental health struggle, you're a victim and you're choosing to be that way. And it's something that you just have to decide to get out of, right? I learned very quickly and got humbled very quickly when it happened to me that it is not that easy.
So, Nick, I'm super excited to have you here with me today. We have a cool story in that I was speaking at an event in our industry, which is wealth management, and I was doing a presentation. I was talking about my life model, and you came up to the booth afterwards, and I think I got to sign a book, and we talked, and you told me your book was coming out, and we had to communicate that on this podcast. So I'm so excited to have you here. Thanks for joining me today.
For sure, Scott. It's one of those the universe makes things happen, you know. When I heard you speaking on stage, I was like, I have to go talk to this guy afterwards. Yeah, everything you said resonated really well with me too.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it was such a cool story, and I think as you probably, like any of us, when you're watching a speaker, the first thing you do is you kind of look them up and you see like what else are they doing, or how are they connected, or is there an outlet? And we had so many connectivity points and conversation points, and I've had a lot of great conversations with former Green Berets or Navy SEALs or other special forces on the show. And so it's really kind of cool to bring it in to a different dynamic, because you talk about something a lot of people are afraid to talk about. And that's, mental health. That's, the challenge that so many people that have had high level, high performing jobs have, not just in the military, but all around. But in the military, it's hush hush. So, I've got your new book here, Stigma, and we'll definitely talk about it. But I mean, this is your talking point. I just walk the audience a little bit through this conversation of what drove you to put this information out there to the universe.
Yeah, so it's a long story, but I'll summarize it as best I can. So essentially, I enlisted in the Army and went to Special Forces training and went to an ODA Special Forces team. Did all that for a couple years, and then had a pivotal moment in my career when my son was born, and I deployed about 3 weeks after he was born. So kind of like literally left my wife and son on an island in Okinawa, Japan when I was gone. They had no friends or anything. But long story short, during that deployment, I kind of saw the writing on the wall that if I stayed in the Special Forces career, that I would have to choose either be an absent father to some extent, or just kind of do my best, right? There's a spectrum of very good and capable parents in that community, and then the opposite, right? Would rather be gone and not home. So I decided during that deployment to drop my flight packet and go aviation, so Army aviation, and fly helicopters. During that transition, so once I got to flight school and everything, it was not what I expected. I went from kind of this like fantasy land to being a Green Beret and like getting treated well, having autonomy and being able to kind of be treated like a big boy, right? You show up, you do your job, you do what you need to do, then you take care of your life other than that. And it was the exact opposite. It was micromanagement to the core. Like if you have to study or you have an upcoming class, they would make you sit in a classroom from 9 to 5 just to study. So it wasn't like, show up and then you go do your thing and perform. It was very much like forced success. So that accompanied with a bunch of other factors led me, my mind just started going. Like one day in class, I just got hit by these suicidal ideations, man. It was literally out of the blue. It wasn't like a ramp up or like I saw it coming or could have seen warning signs, maybe potentially in retrospect, but at the time it hit me in the face. And it was very much like my mentality is as a high performer, and most of us are, is like when there's a problem, we want to fix it right away, right? If there's a problem, we want to find the solution. So that was my mentality was, okay, why is this happening? How can I avoid it from happening? And how can I stop it from continuing to happen? But by doing that, I actually ended up obsessing over these thoughts. So it became this like endless thought loop that just consumed me. And to keep it brief, since I know we'll get into it more, that lasted a good 5 years, man. And I was able to mask it. I was able to perform through it. And, but I say that like career wise, I was able to perform, but I was not performing as a husband. I was not performing as a dad. You know, those went to the wayside because I had to deal with my own stuff and I couldn't really give the time and attention that my wife and kids deserve. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. We'll get into it more, but that's kind of the overview of what
Do,
happened.
do you notice anything, as you look back on this trajectory and this challenge? Do you remember back to any other time in your life prior to that moment that this started, or do you feel like as a young kid, as somebody that was growing up, did you ever struggle in these ways, or was this just totally out of the blue because you felt so restricted and unable to maybe do what you always loved doing and you felt kind of trapped?
You know what's ironic is and that's part of the reason I wrote this book is because prior to this, I had no history of mental health, anything. I honestly was one of those people that subscribe to the idea that if you have a mental health struggle, you're a victim and you're choosing to be that way. And it's something that you just have to decide to get out of, right? I learned very quickly and got humbled very quickly when it happened to me that it is not that easy. And it can consume you and it can take you down a really dark path. And it's not just like you push a button and you're fixed. So no, I hadn't prior to that. It was very out of the blue. And I think that's why, well, I know that's why I obsessed over it so much and I got so ingrained in it, I guess, if you will.
Well, I think it's easy to do. I mean, many people can relate to having an obsessive thought, especially like over a night. Like, sometimes something just gets in your head and you can't get it out, and you end up not sleeping. You end up not think. You're thinking in loops, and then you wake up and it was a useless loop. Like it was something that it didn't even matter. You're fine the next day, but it just once the brain takes over, it's very difficult sometimes to get out of that. And what you're explaining was a 5 year loop that was drowning you to the point where you start your book out and you talk about having the gun and thinking about utilizing that gun and then begging your wife to come in and take the gun apart so that she could put it in different places that you wouldn't know, so you wouldn't be driven to go do that. And I mean, it's such a powerful start to a book, but I think the whole objective was, you also felt alone, like there was nobody you could talk to.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's the most shocking thing to me has been on the backside of it. Now that I've talked about it, now that I'm vulnerable, right? Like my deepest, darkest secrets are out there in the world. And that was terrifying, absolutely terrifying to do, especially with my background, right? That is not something that we typically do. But I will say that that has so much power and freedom now because now I'm able to be myself again. I don't have to like pretend that I'm somebody else you know, for whatever reasons. Now I can just be myself and it's like, there it is, man. You either like it or you don't. So it's been very freeing. But yeah, it was really scary and it was not easy to open that bag.
So you walk us through the journey of becoming a Green Beret, just for the listeners out there, because I think sometimes it's good to go on this hero's journey of seeing the entire storyline play out and having success. Obviously, the fun of being in special forces is you're kind of like the entrepreneur of the
Yeah.
military. You get to taste the best equipment and try stuff that nobody else is doing. You have complete and utter freedom except for when you go on mission. Like there's a lot of things that a lot of people I think don't understand about that kind of role. It's like being a CEO of your career. And as long as you do it right, you're good. So walk us through what made you choose that career, and then maybe the success early on. And then I want to walk through. I don't want to stop the mental health conversation, but I want to kind of give people a little more glimpse into who you are.
Yeah, for sure. So the my story getting into the army is not glamorous, I'll tell you that. I I was a really good student in high school. Like 3.8 GPA, just crushing everything. So I got into a good school. Um, but I will preface that with a lot of the success that I had when I was younger was forced success. I had really strict parents, and they were like, my mom was the type of mom that, like, if I got a B, it wasn't like, good job, you'll get them next time, whatever. Or like, it was really like, why did you get a B instead of an A? Like, what did you do wrong to get a B? Not good job, So that was my experience growing up. So I go to college and I have no mom telling me what to do and making sure I'm doing well. So naturally, as a young dumb 18-year-old, I stopped going to class, start drinking and partying till 3 4 a.m. and sleeping until noon. And then 3 weeks go by and I'm like, it's not even worth going to class. So I got a 1.6 my freshman year. Had a real conversation with my dad, and he was like, hey man, you're either taking out all the debt for this or you're dropping out. Like, those are your options. So I ended up dropping out. And I was fortunate that in college I was in ROTC, so Army ROTC, which is like the pipeline to go be an officer.
Right.
So I had that exposure to the military. So when I got back after college, went back, worked for my dad for a little bit, and then enlisted in the Army as what's called an 18 X-ray. So 18 X-ray is the Special Forces contract. It's essentially, it gives you the opportunity to go to Special Forces assessment. So that's it. It's not like if you sign this, you're going to be a Green Beret. It's like you get the chance to be a Green Beret, basically.
Right.
So that's how the contract part comes. So I ship out in July 2010 and you do go to infantry basic training. All the 18 X-rays do. That's at Fort Benning. And then once you're done with that, you go to airborne school right afterwards. So jump out of airplanes and do all that. So I make it sound like it's nothing, but that was scary for me as a like young kid. I was 21 at the time. It was a lot more nerve wracking than I give it credit for. A lot of people give it credit for. So I do that, and then you ship up to Fort Bragg, and that's where the Special Forces training is. So as a new 18 X-ray, we go to this pre-selection course. It's like a 3-week basically train up. It was awesome. You sleep 10 to 12 hours a day, work out twice a day, and then just get classes. It was like the coolest Army course I've ever been to, because you're there for a reason, but you're just working out and getting really fit. So you do that, and then after you go to selection. And SFAS is what it's called, Special Forces Assessment and Selection. It's 19 days, give or take. And the first week is essentially like a gate week. So you're doing runs, rucks, all these undisclosed distances, obstacle courses. And that's essentially your time to say, I got it or I don't, right? I can hang with the best or I can't. So that's week 1. Week 2 is land nav. Land nav, you get a map, you get a compass, you carry a ruck on your back, and they say, here's your first point. You have to find 4 in 12 hours, but they're like 10 kilometers ish each apart. So, and you don't know your 4 points. So you get one at a time. So you basically have to find that one, and then somebody's at that point and they give you your next one. So complete that and you get a go for land nav. So you have to find all 4 points. If you don't find them, then you have another opportunity to do it. But anyways, then the last week is team week. And that's when you're put on a team, obviously, of 10 to 12 dudes. And then the cadre, the instructors, give you some sort of problem set. So you'll show up and there's like telephone poles or logs and water jugs and ammo cans and just these random things. And you get some rope, and you essentially have a time limit to bring all those items from point A to the finish line, point B. And you're in charge, put in charge of one of these events during the week. So the cadre are looking at you, seeing how you can lead other people. And then also, when you're not in charge, how you follow, right? If you're the guy that's like always trying to step on other people's toes and causing conflict, and it will expose every single quality of a person because of that, because you're under stress. Everybody's pissed off, because nothing ever goes right. So that's the last week is team week. And then at the end, you all get in a big formation. They call you in one by one, and they tell you whether you did enough and you got selected or not. SFAS, this is a big misunderstanding for a lot of people. This is just the tryout to start training as a Green Beret. So this is not like you pass this and you're a Green Beret. This is the start of a 1.5 to 2 year pipeline. So once you graduate, or once you get selected, if you get selected, then you start the training. So I'll briefly go over it, but first 6 months is language school. So they teach you a language. So mine was Korean. So I had to learn some hieroglyphics and figure out what the symbols meant and actually apply that. So that was cool. The biggest takeaway from that was just the capability of like the human mind of being trained something, right? Like you can start day one, you have no idea how to do anything, and then 6 months later, like you could get dropped off in South Korea and be okay. It's pretty phenomenal.
That's awesome.
How we can learn things so quickly, right? So that was the first phase. Second phase after that is small unit tactics, and that is, if anybody's heard of Ranger School, it's essentially the Special Forces version of Ranger School. So you're learning how to lead patrols, do ambushes, all the tactics that are required to be a Green Beret. Not all, but most. And then that's also a leadership school, which was hard for me as a junior guy, telling these like senior, staff sergeants and guys who had been in the Army for 5-6 years what to do. I'm like, dude, I have no place telling you what to do, but I'm going to fake it and we'll see what happens. So that's small unit tactics. Then after that, you go to SEER school, which is survival, evasion, resist, escape. That's the school that you learn a lot about yourself, for sure. You are forced into.
That's the mental
just
one,
really,
right?
That is the mental one. Yeah, that's essentially, they're essentially teaching you how to be resilient. I mean, that's literally the takeaway from that school is how to be resilient and how to, really just survive if something were to happen to you terribly downrange. That's the school that I always say, like, I'm so grateful I got to do it, but I would never, ever want to do it again because it was just such a gut check. But after SEER, so we're about 10 months into training right now after SEER school. And then after SEER, you get your job. So your MOS, military occupational specialty. And that's like what you're going to be on the Special Forces team. So there's a weapons sergeant, there's an engineer, which is demo and construction. There's a communications guy, and then there's a medic. So those are the 4 core MOSs. So I got 18 Charlie, which is an engineer. So I got to learn construction, some very basic construction, which is cool because it translated really well to being a homeowner later in life. But I would have never thought that at 21 years old, And then after the construction phase, which is about a month long, you go into demolitions. So you get to learn how to blow stuff up with C4 and make big ditching charges and cut doors and do all that cool stuff that you see in the movies. It was really fun. The most fascinating thing was just how much math and precision can go into that stuff. That was just mind blowing to me. But that's 18 Charlie course, MOS phase. And then the last thing you do, the last month, is called Robin Sage. It's a 3-week long, basically culmination of everything you've learned the prior 1.5 years. So it's putting all the pieces together and essentially seeing if you can apply everything you've learned. And that's your final test to essentially be like, okay, this guy's ready to be a Green Beret, or he's not, So, and then after that is graduation. So for me, it was a 1.5 years, a little over 1.5 years throughout. So that's the entire pipeline.
And you felt accomplished. You're ready to move on. And how long were you in the Special Forces as a Green Beret before you decided that you needed to make a change because your son was born? So I'm just curious about like life. So during this, you meet your wife, she gets pregnant,
Yep.
You have a son. This is approximately 11 years ago. Is that right? Because you said he's 11.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. 2014 is when he was born. So yeah. So Special Forces life was incredibly fun. Like it was almost an extension in a weird way of like the college life, where you're hanging out with the boys every day. Like, you guys all have the same mindset, very similar mindset. Like you said, it's like it's a very autonomous job. Not initially, not as a new guy, but once you get established on a team, it's a very autonomous job. You really have the ability to think outside the box and improve things, right? Like, the that's the beauty of special operations. Is in the regular military, everything's very regimented for a reason, but there's no ability for the individual to be creative or to use his, innovation. And it's the opposite in special forces. Like, if we wanted a piece of equipment for our team, all we had to do was figure out where to get it, how to buy it, and really like put in a request and sell, the boss on why we should get this piece of equipment. So that's just one example of many, but that's kind of the lifestyle. As far as like work life balance, there's not much of that because you're gone. I was gone about 2/3 of the year. So you're just constantly, if you're not deployed, you're training, or you're going to a professional development school and you're learning a new skill. So it's a pretty heavy and fast paced lifestyle in that regard. But luckily for me, it was, my wife was active duty too. I didn't mention that. So she was full time. She was an Army officer. So she was able to be independent enough when I was gone that it was still stressful, but it was a little better than if she was just, not working or just stuck on the island by herself.
Yeah, I don't think people understand the full capacity of the special forces spouse. And when
Yeah.
you're gone, I know in Norfolk, Virginia, where we are, you have a lot of my friends are SEALs, and I know their families, I know their wives, and they're special. They're special humans because they're running everything, and you're kind of swooping in and swooping out, and it's very
Yeah.
difficult to have this autonomy, this independence, this chain of command, and then to come home and it doesn't all go maybe the way you expect it to go either. Like, that's also hard. So it's a very unique dynamic, and those that make it through it are really, really blessed and worked hard because it's not easy. And I know the friends of ours that have done really well with this, and it's taken work, and it's something to be proud of, both from both perspectives.
Yeah, and that's a good point, man. My wife carried the load for years, and it's also one of those things that it's difficult as a husband, as a father, because when you're, and this is, I'm not trying to make excuses, so I hope this doesn't sound like that, but when you're surrounded by high performing individuals all the time, every single day, and you come home and you're used to that, right, for a long period of time, and you come home and something's not in order, something is not how you want it to be, right? It is so easy to look at your family and expect that same standard from your family, even if your kids, 7 years old or 6 years old, and it's so unreasonable. But it's so easy to get caught up in that and not take a step back and say, oh, like, I need to not be treating these people like they're Green Berets, or like they're 160th pilots. Like, it's such a difficult dynamic because you're so ingrained in it all the time, and that's what you expect is high performance, high quality, and perfection almost all the time. So yeah, you got to give your family a lot of grace in that, and I had to learn that the hard way. Frankly, there was a lot of times where I screwed that up.
Well, I mean, look, we all do. So at the end of the day, anyone that has a high level of intensity, a lot of times people get to see the end result, the success, the positive stories, all the good stuff. I'm very proud of my sons. They're very, very high performers. Maybe part of the reason that they are able to handle that high intensity is they also had to handle me. And so what I mean by that is when I come home, it's the same, it's no different than what you're expecting. I'm in an environment where I'm in the lead. I'm directing, I'm building multiple projects, I'm building a business. And then you come home and things are not in order. So you definitely have that, like, why don't we do this? Or how come we don't try this? And why it's that mentality that you have to shift from to have more grace. and it takes
Yes.
time. And I never perfected it in any capacity, but I definitely got better. Part of being a high performer, and we use this word, it's funny how many people listen to this and don't think you're high performers. Um, I had a friend of mine that we were talking the other day, and he goes, I don't really look at myself as a high performer. And I said, can I tell you something that's unique? I said, when I was starting my business and I was knocking on doors and cold calling and building it, I had no level of success. I was struggling to get off the ground, but I was the same high performing, intense human that I am today. Like that didn't change. I was always that. So just because you're at the beginning point of something and you're starting it doesn't mean that it's not going to get to the point one day where it feels like you actually did what you put out to do. And but to that point, there with that intensity, there's a lot of positivity and great things. You can accomplish a lot, but you also have to learn to dial it down. And that's very, very difficult to do for everyone. So Nick, you're not alone.
Yeah.
Whether you're in the military or it also, I think a lot of moms have this today where they come home and they're executives and they're thinking the same way. So this is not even just a man's problem, but it
Good
it
point.
probably has been a man's problem for a long time. That high intensity, that discipline, that expectation. So it's a very relatable point is the key. And but I think that it also probably helps, maybe hurts the part of the mental health, because sometimes when you feel like things are out of control at work or you're not controlling that direction, and then you don't feel like you're in control at home, that can be very, very disheartening and challenging. And that's probably one of the things that really starts to cause a rough patch. But that's
Yeah.
probably something you could speak to.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also very dangerous. How you use the word grace, and grace is one of the most underrated words that I could ever like. I didn't think grace was as important as it is a good way to say it. Like when I was going through this whole debacle, this whole dark age is what I call it, I was so mean to myself. Like I was my own, we all are our own worst critics, but it was like I I didn't give myself permission to feel the way I was feeling because I looked at my life how everybody else looked at it, right? I was like, dude, you have a beautiful wife, you have beautiful kids, you're crushing it in flight school, in the army, whatever you're doing, like you are just everybody looks at you like you're a stud and you're killing it. You have no excuse to feel this way, right? And that was my daily conversation with myself. And that also to the marriage piece, that also led to me becoming like resentful almost towards my wife, and she'll admit this as well. Like we got to the point in our marriage where we were legit just roommates, and it was very much like almost blaming each other for our unhappiness, and that's a very dangerous place to be. In retrospect, looking at it, the irony of all of that, right, is when I was going through it, it was very easy to do that, but our marriage started getting exponentially better once I started getting exponentially better. So the takeaway from that is I could have played the victim card and like, been like, woe is me, you didn't do this, so this is why I'm unhappy, right? But the lesson learned from that was, as the leader of my household, man, I was the one that was driving that emotion more than anything else, more than any actions anybody else did. Like me being stuck in that rut projected onto my entire family. And I didn't learn that quick enough, but in retrospect, it's an incredible lesson learned from that, right? Is like, what's that Bible verse? You have a speck in your eye, or you're pointing out somebody's speck in their eye, and then you have a plank in your own. That
Yeah,
was that
right.
was me. I was embodying that unintentionally, but yeah, that's the biggest lesson learned from all that, man, is grace. And then as the leader of your household, you have such a huge impact on what's going on.
Well, it's interesting because you had the awareness and wanted to be a great dad. whether you were practicing that in the moment or not, you were setting a goal and an expectation for yourself, like you had done most of your career, where you set a high expectation, you achieve that expectation, and maybe the route there is rough, but there's still there's a journey that you have to get comfortable walking in, not just the
Yeah.
result, and that's really really hard. And it's gonna be bumpy, and it's gonna be. I use the life model. The funny thing is, we talked about this earlier. I use the life model to help me with imbalance, because when I found myself getting too engaged or too involved at work, I would notice other things were slipping. My wife and I started to do our ROM weeks or weekends, where rekindle our marriage is what we called it. And we would go out of town, and it would just be the two of us. And we would get to like each other again. We always loved
Yeah.
each other, but we had to like each other. We had to actually be around each other. And these are things that you take for granted, but it was the reshuffling of the most important things and making sure that you're prioritizing them first. And that's something everyone has to do. That's not just people
Oh
in the
yeah.
military that are going in and out of town. This is in any career, in any life, in any marriage, in any relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And it, I think part of it is how much focus and prioritization, like you said, we're putting on our career versus our family. Because it's very easy when we're in these high octane roles to give it all to work. That's what we want to do. We want to crush what we do because we put a lot of our identity in that. Whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent, that's just kind of the reality of it. Is we get validation out of doing good work and performing well and getting recognized for that, or whatever it may be. But it's very easy to put all your effort and all your focus and all your attention into that, and then everything else just becomes an afterthought, or kind of like you're just coasting with the other parts of life. It's
Well, it
super
gets
easy to do
it's
that and
it's
fall into that.
easy. The problem is that becomes the easy part. It's way
Yeah.
easier to excel at work than it is to excel at your family. That there's
Yep.
there's no question that it's easier to be great at something outside the home. To be great inside your home is very very challenging, because there's very seldom those accolades. In fact, if you're
Yeah.
great inside your home as a father, most of the time you feel like nobody is recognizing it. It's very normal for dads to feel like you're just putting your head down and nobody notices. And
Yeah.
it's funny how much I admire my dad as I get older, because he did a lot of the little things really well. He wasn't always good at some of the other stuff, and I can find all the things he's not good at, just like my sons can find all the things I'm not good
Right.
at. But the reality is, it's showing up, it's being loyal, it's being committed, it's being there when you need them. Like, it's the things that I was safe, simple
Yeah.
things. So you have an 11-year-old son. Is that your only child, or you have more than one, right?
I have two. I have a 9-year-old daughter as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 9 and 11, you're like right in the middle. It doesn't feel like the middle. It feels like it's just the beginning. But then you wake up and both of my boys are out. And
Whew.
now I just look forward to like having all four of us together for like a dinner one night, or these little tiny things. And it flies by, and I'm not saying that to like to
No.
to feel anything other than, if you knew what it felt like when it's over, you would love the ride you're on 10x more. Then, because guess what never feels better? Like, work doesn't get any different. You succeed, you need more. You succeed, you need
Yeah.
more. Whatever it is, you're going to do more. It's not like that with your family. You need less, and you
Yeah.
get less, and time just kind of moves. So it's cool that you identified this. I'm going to bring us back around, listeners, to the point here. It's cool that you identified this, and this kind of pushed you into a new trajectory. So you took this other role that you weren't super excited about with the thought, and identifying that this was to be a better dad and a better husband. And then it took 5 years of pain and suffering and challenge to maybe get through it. What was the breakthrough for you, Nick? How did you break through to the next level? How did you
Yeah,
get through this challenge?
good question. So my career trajectory was the overarching story of my career was just continue to try to succeed your way out of it. That was my personal way to fixing it, right? Because I tried everything else. I tried meditation, journaling, self-help books, my diet was already good, my exercise was already good. So I basically like went down the list that if you Google like how to fix depression, I went down that list and knocked everything out, but nothing really worked. So my solution was to try to succeed my way out of it. So through aviation, I spent about a year and a half in the regular Army aviation, so flying Blackhawks for 3rd Combat Aviation Brigade. Then I tried out and assessed and got picked up for the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. They are, for the audience, they are the premier aviation unit in the world, arguably. So any major like mission that you've seen on movies with special operations in it, it was probably the 160th helicopters flying them in. So
Black
that's
Hawk Down, wasn't that
Black Hawk
that's the one? Yeah,
Down. Yep. Lone Survivor.
yep.
The list goes on. But yeah, so I was in that unit, and that helped my depression get better, but it still didn't fix it because my depression actually morphed into panic attacks and anxiety because, well, I don't actually know the medical official reason, but what I can look at is it was essentially like a fight or flight response that my body was giving me because I was in this survival mode for so long. So it started manifesting in these like dizzy spells and panic attacks and all that. Long story short, I ended up getting knee surgery. So I needed knee surgery because I had a hole in my knee, like a defect that had just been ground down, from wear and tear. And it was a 9-month recovery time. So since mental health was so taboo and so many stigmas associated with it, I used this as an opportunity to talk about the dizzy spells and actually open that door. But I prefaced it with I didn't tell them my history of, suicidal ideation and depression because I still didn't want that to be me. I really didn't. I didn't want to accept that.
Nick, can I
But that
interrupt for one?
started,
Let me interrupt for one
yeah,
second. I just have
absolutely.
a quick question. Isn't that
Yeah,
also because you're afraid of what it might do to your career? I mean, so many people are
100%.
afraid of opening up because they don't want, I mean, the reason you excel at work is because you want to provide for your family. At the end of the day, a man's job is to provide and protect. Fundamentally,
Yes.
those two things, provide and protect. So when you open up that vulnerability and you say, I'm having suicidal tendencies, you could become marked and you will
Yes.
not have the career that you potentially could have. And that's a fear most people have, especially men who don't talk about it.
You nailed it. And that's so to the book, that's where stigma was born, right? Was once I got through all of this, I had I'll tell you the story real quick. So my brother is a Green Beret as well. So he kind of followed my footsteps. But when I finally got the balls, frankly, to tell him that I had gone through this, he was at my house and he started crying. And I didn't really realize the gravity of it, right? That like he looked at it from the perspective of like, dude, you could not be here talking to me today. Like, you know what I mean? Like basically like got really emotional. And I told him, I was like, man, he's like, why didn't you tell me? And I said, I couldn't. I couldn't risk telling you because if you felt obligated to tell somebody in my command or whatever that I was going through this just because, you love me and you were doing it out of love, that could have catapulted my career. That could have put all these things into place that I didn't want to. And he looked at me and he said, that's a problem, dude. And I said, yeah. And that's where stigma was born. That's where in the back of my mind, I was like, this is a massive problem that we have in our society and in our culture. And the stigma is just to go over them real quick. The biggest one, other than the career is the toughest one. The biggest one is that admitting mental health is going to make somebody look weak, right? You don't want to be perceived as weak as a human being. I can confidently say that admitting my mental health struggles was the most courageous thing that I ever did in my life. Most courageous thing I ever did in my life. And I've done some arguably, courageous things, but that was it, man. That was the hardest thing I ever did. Most courageous, but also one of the most impactful decisions I ever made. So that's stigma one, is you're not weak if you go through mental health struggles. It just makes you human, you know? Number two is you feel like a burden, right? If you tell somebody, especially even in the workplace, if you have to you just feel like you're going to let others down and others are going to have to pick up the weight for you. And then also at home, I didn't want my wife to have the burden of this as well, because I knew she was already, stressed out, dealing with young kids, living her own life, right? I didn't want to bring that burden to her. But what I've learned through that is she wanted to know. Everybody wanted to know, because they love me and they want to support me, right? They wanted to be able to walk through it with me and meet me where I was, instead of her wondering, why is Nick acting so distant, or why is Nick being such a, you know what I mean? Just like a zombie of himself. She wanted that. She wanted to share that burden, and it would have helped me get better faster.
Well, to that point, Nick, another point that I think a lot of men are
Yeah,
super scared about is, and it's not without reason, is that
right.
it is difficult to share weakness with your spouse, especially because there's a lot of relationships that rely upon you to be that strength. And when you aren't strong, it almost amplifies the weakness. It doesn't make, a lot of men don't feel like it's going to make it better. They feel like it's going to make it worse. And so that weight of feeling weak is challenging. And in the work side, I can remember being in my mid 20s, late 20s, and one of my buddies telling me that he had a lot of stuff on his plate and he was struggling, and we were having a conversation, we were talking super deep, and I was like, dude, don't hire a therapist, just go to a coach. And he goes, yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. And I'm like, no, don't put that on your record. Like, just don't have it on your, I can remember saying this. I'm in my
Right.
20s and I'm like, dude, I got your back. I mean, by the way, I'm also telling him I've got it. I'll help him through it. Like, we're not punting. We were going deep, but I was like, hire a coach that you could talk to and you'll feel more comfortable, but it won't be a black mark on
Right.
your life. And
Right.
and that is a stigma, that is a challenge, and I
Yeah.
think differently today at 47 than I did at 27. But thank God I think differently. But I could see both of those things being reasons why they just don't want to share that.
Yeah, absolutely. And these stigmas are they're so captivating, man. They are so powerful when you believe them. And here's the last. Well, there's two more. So reputation. My reputation is going to be screwed if people find out, right? And then the last one that you talked to earlier is the career one. What is going to happen to my career if I admit this? And that's the hardest one, because we like we talked about, our identity relies on our career, our livelihood relies on our career. There's a lot of things going on with that stigma. But the most important thing that I learned, and I didn't believe it at the time when I first opened up about it, but there are way too many people, and this is going to get a little heavy, but way too many people that have taken their lives because of this, right? They get to the point, and I was very close to it. They get to the point where the reason behind it, at least in my mind, is you don't see a way out. You don't see an escape. You feel like you're letting everybody down, and you feel like this is never going to end. So this is the best option, right? Just that's the inside of the mind of why people do it. And the tragedy is people put your career on a pedestal over your life. That's essentially what it comes down to at that point, right? And you're rolling the dice with your own life because of your career. And I do understand that it's very difficult to overcome that and to come to that realization and say, I'm fine, I can keep going, but that's a very slippery slope to walk down. So those are the stigmas. And I just wanted to go over those because that's to the career piece. That was the hardest one by far for me to overcome by a long shot,
But you
because
did.
everything rides on it.
But you
I
did.
did. Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
so just to bring it full circle, you had surgery, you started to identify those things. Eventually, you actually identified some of the beyond the dizzy spells. You talked about the suicidal tendencies. You work through this. Walk us through the
Yeah.
breakthrough, just so that people can hear the full story.
Yep. So I was very hesitant to disclose anything mental health, like I said. So this was a year and a half, almost 2 year um, period where I was essentially diagnosis seeking. I essentially wanted something to be wrong with my body to explain these dizzy spells. I did not want to get labeled mental health case, right? So I went through heart stress tests, brain MRIs, brain CT scans, nerve testing in my body, literally ENT, literally head to toe, everything. Because I was like, there's no way. Well, I didn't even tell them. I didn't even put the seed that it's mental health in their minds, right? I just told them there's something wrong with me and I'm having dizzy spells. So, long story short, eventually I get a sleep study done. This sleep study diagnoses me with narcolepsy. And narcolepsy is where you randomly fall asleep. And granted, I'm a helicopter pilot, man. I'm flying like $40 million helicopters around. I'm like, there's no way I have narcolepsy. First of all, I've never fallen asleep just randomly. I was tired all the time, but yeah, I was like, there's no way.
You got
But
a worse
what came out of that,
diagnosis, a worse diagnosis than mental
right,
health.
right.
Mental health is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, exactly. But what came out of that was kind of a blessing in disguise because the Army permanently grounded me from flying. And then I did a follow-up sleep study with the Army because they wanted to basically confirm it or deny it, whether they were, because they were going to medically retire me. And I get a sleep study done with the Army and they tell me I don't have narcolepsy, no diagnosable criteria. So now I'm like, I'm grounded from flying but I can't get out of the Army. So I'm just like, I feel like just a paperweight in my unit. I'm just like, cool guys, I can't contribute, but here I am, Um, but what that permanent grounding from the Army did was it allowed me to open the door. I told my psychologist everything. I said, hey, like, since I can't fly anymore, this is what was actually going on before these dizzy spells started. And that allowed her to really analyze the full picture and tell me what was going. And then we got to the bottom of it. So I got put on some anti-anxiety meds and don't want to bore you with the details, but went through like 5 different medications. Like it was ridiculous. So every couple of weeks I had to try a new one. And finally I found one that works. But then my dizzy spells became very like situational. So it was very obvious when they were happening. So I took that back to my psychologist and said, hey, they're happening when I'm in large crowds, when I'm at a pumpkin patch with my family, just these random, like, seems low stress, but they were high stress to me because what I came to the realization is when I wasn't in control of the situation, that's when they would happen.
I was
Right.
just
So
thinking
when
the word
somebody else could,
control. I was
yeah,
just thinking of the word control.
exactly.
You can't control where you're
Yep.
going to go, what you're going to do.
Yep.
Someone else is controlling it, and it makes you feel like you're
100%.
losing.
Yep. 100%. But
I've
by me
never felt
pinpointing
any
that,
of this. I've never felt that before. I don't know what you're talking about at all.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what's wild is I thought I was crazy, man. I thought I was losing my mind this entire period, right? Because I thought I was the only person in the world that has ever dealt with any of this. Because you don't talk about it. We didn't talk about it in our community. So she essentially that gave her enough information to read the symptoms of anxiety with panic disorder, and literally line by line as she read them to me, I was like, damn, that's it. Like, you nailed it. So once I finally had a diagnosis, once I finally accepted that that's what my diagnosis was, that's what really allowed me to start getting out of the pit and start healing. And I don't want to like sugarcoat it. It wasn't like I was magically cured, right? It was still a good year and a half of putting into practice everything that I had learned prior and getting to the point where I'm good, like, and I got to the point where now I tapered off the medication and now I still do like preventative mental care, I guess, like cold plunging. I still meditate. I still journal. I still do all of those things that didn't work when I was in the storm because now they work, right? Now I can see clearly and now they work. So yeah, it's been an incredible journey to get here. It wasn't an easy journey, but the acceptance and realization that this is what it is. I'm not going to die from it. and I can get through it. That really was the biggest like eye opener for me. And then also just being vulnerable and telling people about it, like realizing I am not alone by a long shot, you know?
It's great. It's interesting to
Yeah.
me. I've had some people on the show, and one particular guest talked about how cold plunging helped them bring calm to chaos, and
Yep.
they were having panic attacks, and they were going through it. And I'm not saying they didn't get other things, but doing the cold therapy consistently allowed them to really work on bringing that chaos to calm, and then remembering it as almost like a habit that they had established over and over and over again. And I do it all the time as well, and I find it to
Yep.
be uh much better. I'm just a better human when I'm able to do these things. So I also build these disciplines into my day so that I have that level of control. But it's
Yeah.
also something that gives me the feeling like, okay, I know how to bring this chaos to calm. I understand some of these things in a way I never did before. And another thing I just wanted to say briefly is I have a younger brother who's, almost 14 years younger than me. And it's amazing how often I hope I'm doing this, but I try to do it. I'm constantly sharing a lot of, the bigger feelings, the failures, the challenges. Like, it's really easy to look at my life and say, wow, he's got it all figured out. Like, he's doing all these great things, and Scott's successful. And I have lots of those things, but I also have a lot of my own struggles and challenges. And, at the end of the day, you want your brother or your family to know that we're in this together. And like you
Yeah.
said, the stigma can be erased if you realize you're not in it alone, and there is a way out. There is an opportunity to find help.
Yeah. 100%, man. We're all in this together, like we're all in this together, but we don't treat it that way. We treat it like we're on our island and we got to deal with our own stuff, but it's I'd encourage anybody that's listening, if you're struggling or gone through anything, like tell somebody, man, whether it doesn't have to be like an official psychologist or something, but even a friend, whatever, tell somebody, a sibling, doesn't matter. You'll feel a weight off your shoulders almost instantly. It's very powerful. And
It's
I
a
appreciate
start.
you saying that because yeah, it's very easy to we live in this social media world where we're comparing ourselves to everybody, right? And everybody sees the highlight reels, so it's
Yeah.
very easy to think that everybody's doing perfect and you're the only one, but that's not the reality, man. We're all humans at the end of the day.
Yeah, believe
We
me,
might
I
have
can
practices that help us, but yeah.
I can find lots of challenges in a day. These are lots of
Yeah.
things that we all have and everybody goes through, no matter how good it looks from the outside. It's one of the reasons I struggle to post so much on social media, is that I absolutely hate only showing the great things. Like, I think
Yeah.
it's such a scam and total bullshit when everybody
Yeah.
puts
It
all only
is.
the good stuff. And it's not that there's bad stuff. It's just that, man, it's like you don't have to be in the perfect plane or drive the perfect car, or there's lots of other stuff that you're doing that are cool. And it's funny why reality TV is now the thing that people are following the most, because they
Yeah.
see real. They want
Yep.
truth. And I definitely understand and appreciate your message. I love that you're bringing out the book. People, you can buy the book. It's on your site. I know I got it from your site, but can
It's
you also get it on Amazon and everywhere
it
else as well?
yeah, it's everywhere now. Yep.
It just
Yep. Just
launched,
went
right?
just went live. Yeah, it launched October 21st. Just went live on Audible. So we're everywhere now. Yep.
Okay, now Nick, what are you doing now? Because I saw you in the crowd, and you got to listen to me speak for an hour, and you're still not sick of me, so thank you for that. What are you doing now, and how can people find you?
Yeah. So other than the mental health advocacy, I own a financial planning practice with a partner called Cadence Wealth Partners down here in Charlotte. I work with military veterans naturally. It's just my niche, and it works out great. But yeah, we're about a year and a half old, so we're pretty young firm, but we're hungry and we're growing fast. And I love the day to day of being an advisor. It's so cool to You know what's ironic about this, and I never thought about it, but mission planning in the military is so similar to financial planning. It is just mind blowing because you're basically taking somebody from how do I get from point A to point B, right? Accounting for every contingency along that way, like, and achieve mission success at the end. That's like, it was such an epitome when I like realized how similar the two practices are. You know, obviously it's different nerd factors, but yeah, it's a very similar industry. So doing that on the professional side, and then thenickokelly.com is my website for Stigma and company called Silent Valor, which is the platform essentially. So I'm looking to get into public speaking, partner with nonprofits and do all of that just to spread the awareness of stigma, because it really is a deeply ingrained cultural problem that we have.
Well, I'm glad you spoke out. I'm glad you came and introduced yourself to me. I'm grateful for the conversation. And most of all, that you're here with us today and you didn't take your life, because it's
Amen.
really, really special when you could take those moments and turn them into something extremely powerful. And that's what you're doing. And, I think it's a very, that's what success truly looks like. So thanks for joining me, Nick.
Thank you.
I'm very grateful.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Scott. It was awesome.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you liked it, there's more where this one came from. Click here and enjoy some more.